Welcome into Hardcore Penn State Football. Penn State falls to Notre Dame 27-24 in the college football playoff semifinal in the Orange Bowl. Shawn, Kane, Cory Lestochi here to break down the game, give our reactions, answer your fan questions, and provide the latest in Penn State football. If you haven't already, please make sure to like the video and subscribe on YouTube. And if you're listening on podcast platform, please make sure you're subscribed wherever you are listening. Let's get right into the show. Welcome into Hardcore Penn State Football. I'm Cory Lestochi. With me, as always, the great Shawn Kane. How you doing today, Shawn?
Been better, Cory. How about you?
I don't know if you can tell, the voice is still trying to come back. It's not completely gone. But it is also not really all there either.
Yeah, how was Miami outside of, what happened?
I wouldn't live in Miami personally. But it was nice. I will say this. You think the parking logistics are bad at State College in Beaver Stadium? Orange Bowl found a way to be worse. It was just not well done. So the Orange Bowl, they didn't let anybody until 2:30. And so we are at a Publix down the road with a decent amount of other Penn State fans who just started tailgating at the Publix parking lot, the grocery store parking lot, because they literally were turning people away until 2:30 on the dot, which then, of course, 2:30 happens, and now there's a flood of people trying to get in instead of just letting people trickle in when they want. The main kind of highway through there, 4-lane highway, was not shut down for the game. And so they were having to constantly stop traffic, let people through to park, and then continue the traffic. And then afterwards, they have these like pedestrian bridges that go over the highway instead of just stopping traffic, but it bottlenecks all the traffic, foot traffic onto the bridge. It took us a solid 30, 40 minutes to get back to our car once leaving the stadium. So that wasn't great. And then the traffic out was just as bad as a Penn State night game. And so we just stayed and grilled some hamburgers and hot dogs for another hour and a half, and then waited for the crowd to go down. So not great from a logistics standpoint. Shawn, the stadium's fantastic. 2-minute 50 commercial breaks. I was able to get up from my seat, which I had fantastic seats, go to the bathroom, get more beer, and get back to my seats before the commercial break was over. Couldn't imagine trying to do that in Beaver Stadium. I was able to do that. So many bathrooms. It was a really nice concourse. A lot of food options. I didn't really partake in the food. Free refills on popcorn. They had hibachi. I mean, a lot of different kind of crazy options you never even think about. So really happy with all that. But the in and out of the stadium was pretty terrible.
Yeah, the stadium was renovated recently. By recently, I mean within the past 5 or 6 years, I know. And obviously that's where my Dolphins play. I am shocked that Stephen Ross cannot figure out the parking situation. Just shocked. But yeah, the stadium, I do want to get down there at some point to watch the Fins. I've actually never been to Miami, so I do want to get down there.
Yeah, it's it wasn't bad. It wasn't a bad. I ate a lot of good food the whole weekend, so that was nice. But yeah, the game itself not wonderful. Hey, before we start on this, Shawn.
Yeah, what happened?
Before we go down what is going to be a very long rabbit hole today, I'm assuming, I just wanted to give a shout out to two individuals that came up to me during the trip down to Florida and then also at the game. Two people that was like, hey, you're Cory from Hardcore Penn State Football. And Shawn and I are always for that. Always stop us, say hi to us. We have no problem saying hi. We have no problem, talking shop real quick, wherever the case may be. So if you do happen to see us, we love that. We love chatting with you guys about football. And so I wanted to give a shout out, first of all, to an individual I actually saw at the Harrisburg airport. He doesn't spell his name correctly, but that is a Corey Hunter, excuse me. Corey spells his name with an E, but we'll get over that for a little bit here. But yeah, he was actually on my shuttle from the parking lot to the airport, and then obviously we're on the same flight down. Direct shot from Harrisburg, Miami, which is quite nice. But we talked football for a little bit there. Really glad that he stopped and said, "I." Little fun fact: he actually taught Nick Singleton in high school, so that was pretty cool. And so I want to give him some love and appreciate him reaching out. And then one of my many trips up to P in the stadium, we ran into Andrew. He was kind of sitting there on the aisle, stopped me. This was actually at a pretty pivotal point in the game, probably in the third, fourth quarter. He stopped me. We got a quick selfie that we posted on X. Appreciate Andrew stopping me and saying hi. So shout out to those two guys. And unfortunately, the game couldn't be better, but appreciate you guys not just recognizing me, but being willing to say hi. It's pretty cool, especially when you're on the road away from home.
Absolutely.
All right, Sean. Penn State loses to Notre Dame 24. Obviously, you know, especially you pointed out how important this game was going to be for you personally, for Penn State as a whole. Doesn't go Penn State's way. They lose 27-24 on a field goal, basically at the end of the game from Jeter to give them the lead. Penn State was up 10-0 at half, or 10-3 at half, excuse me, 10-10 and a flash of a camera. And Penn State was able to tie it and then take the lead again before Notre Dame was able to tie it and then eventually win it on a field goal. Sean, you and I we've texted some, but we haven't really talked very much. I'm just going to hit the little record button here and just let you have first dibs at this. So the floor is yours, my friend.
Yeah. Sucked. Worst I mean, I think that's putting it lightly, but appropriately. Probably the worst loss for the program since 1985. Losing also in the Orange Bowl that time to Oklahoma. Because we were game away from getting to the national championship. I think it was a game that we definitely could have had. It was right there for us. We led a couple times throughout the game. And then I don't know about you, Corey, but I really thought we went up 24-17 that we had them and let them go. Gave up the, Cam Miller slipping. That's not the entire reason we lost. The biggest reason we lost is because of lack of a passing game, but that was a big moment in the game. And another big moment in the game, I thought maybe the biggest, was Riley Leonard going out for that drive. Because I think when Stephen Angeli came in, he gave them, now he didn't do anything spectacular. They were in 2 minutes and he was able to hit some open passes, but it was a change of pace for them and they had done nothing to that point. And I think if we jump on that strip sack, Penn State wins and probably wins a little going away. Because I do think there's a good chance that we could have rode some momentum, maybe kick another field goal, who knows, maybe score another touchdown. But regardless, we're going to be up double digits going into halftime. So that was a big moment in that game, not getting the ball back. I thought we had it. I was high-fiving my family, and then I see them looking at the pile, and I was like, there's a clear recovery. And then I look at replay, there was no clear recovery. And that might have been the only play that I could think of that really hinted at maybe Abdul's injury kind of showed, because I do think if he had that arm as useful as it could have been, he probably recovers that with no problem. But it just didn't happen that way. So yeah, it stings, and it's going to sting for a long time, because it's a game that we definitely could have and probably should have had. Also, right after the game, Corey, you probably saw this. some people were very, very angry in the replies to one of my tweets. It was, I think I said something along the lines of, you have to give Notre Dame credit. They output, they were the better team. And a lot of people were very angry by that. And want to clarify a little bit of what I mean by that. Guys, when you don't have a catch from your receivers, you didn't play a great game. That's not a winning formula when you're trying to go to the national championship. And they executed down the stretch more than we did. So they out executed us. Should we have won? Yeah, we probably should have. But you can't your passing game can't be so inept that you have no catches from your receivers and your quarterback blows it down the stretch. You're not going to win national championships that way. So I know I said a lot there, but that's kind of where I'm at, and it still stings and will sting for a while.
I think you kind of got back to where I wanted to go anyway, though, so I appreciate that. The thing to me is kind of that last point you mentioned there. Penn State outrushed Notre Dame 200-some yards to 100 yards. They won the turnover margin 2-1, which my prediction, that was one of the most important things. I thought if they win the turnover margin, they're going to be fine, especially given how Notre Dame wins football games, which ironically still was a turnover at the end that kind of bailed them out. But the biggest thing that I was wrong about, that was the complete difference, which you just hit on just a little bit there, was as average as Riley Leonard played, Drew Allar played worse. And my prediction going into this was Drew Allar was going to be the better quarterback, and he wasn't. And I wrapped up my prediction by saying whoever has a better quarterback performance is going to win the game. And it wasn't a great performance by Riley Leonard. He threw 2 picks, but he did have, call it 5 throws over the course of the game that were the difference. Whether it was, the one to Greathouse there for the touchdown, whether it was the one to Greathouse on that 3rd and 3 to get them in really good field goal range there at the end, whether it was a throw to Mitchell Evans, the tight end that was covered by Kobe King, or the throw to the running back that was covered by Kobe King. He had a handful of big-time throws that weren't necessarily crazy throws or anything like that, but he gave his receivers chances, and their receivers made the plays. Why I am so infuriated by this and why I am so frustrated by this is there are not very many games that Penn State loses being led by James Franklin where they win the turnover margin and they outrush their opponent. Just doesn't happen very often. There's a perfect kind of storm in that regard, but that to me is why this game was so winnable. That's why this game should have been won. And that's why it's so frustrating. But I will kind of finish the same thing you said, Sean. Notre Dame, I think if you look at their entire body of work, is not as good as Penn State. But you could argue the most important part, they are better than Penn State. And that is whatever kind of testicular fortitude you want to call it, whether it's clutch, whatever word you want to use to describe it. Notre Dame clearly, and not just in the Penn State game, but across the season, has shown the ability to find ways to win. They got punched in the mouth in that first half from Penn State, and they were able to get themselves off the mat and string together a couple drives and actually take the lead at one point there in the 3rd quarter. Not many teams can do that. But when you get to the semifinals and you're down to the final 4 teams in the country, you have to be able to put those teams away. Sean, we talked about Boise State and how Penn State had opportunities early to put them away, and they didn't. And they were still able to win that game against Boise State. This time against Notre Dame, they kind of let Notre Dame off the mat, and you can't do that against a top 4 team in the country. You just can't do it. And give all the credit to Notre Dame because they were able to do it. whether you want to say it was Marcus Freeman, whether you say it's Riley Leonard, whether you want to say it was Jeremiyah Love, whatever the case may be, they have that championship fortitude to not quit, to be comfortable in a rock fight, and basically not stutter, not waver, and wait for the other team to do so. We don't often go and talk about, Joe Paterno very often. But in a lot of ways, the way Joe Paterno coached football, very similar to the way Jim Tressel coached football, which was Marcus Freeman's coach when he was at Ohio State. This brand of football where we're going to point guns at each other and we're going to see who blinks first. Marcus Freeman is doing that exceptionally well right now. And why it's so painful is Penn State blinked first. And Penn State was the one that faltered and basically gave the game to Notre Dame. And Notre Dame's done that to a lot of teams this year. So it's not really like it's luck. They just happen to have that it factor. At least, maybe not, I don't want to say that no Penn State players have that, but they clearly have that it factor with a handful of players that made a difference in the football game that Penn State wasn't able to do. And that's what it kind of came down to, even though Penn State kind of, had their way with them in a lot of other aspects. And that's just kind of how the game went. I think Sean's got something going. I don't know if you texted me, Sean, but I want to give a shout out to Wayback. He says, thank you for the coverage this whole season, guys. Wayback, thank you for being here. I saw Andrew, who I saw at the Orange Bowls on X. Appreciate him being there. Daniel's here. Welcome in, Daniel. Daniel's asking about tight ends for this year. So, yeah, and maybe that's a good pause for a second and just say, we're going to talk about the game. The latter half of this episode, we are going to talk a little bit more future. We got some transfer portal news. We got some NFL declarations. We're going to try to maybe end this podcast a little bit more optimistic. However, I do want to recognize there's a lot of fans that are still pissed, different stages of grief, if you will. And this is our first opportunity to really voice our frustration. So we will move into a more positive what's next for Penn State, but we do have some questions to answer about the Orange Bowl specifically. Sean, how much time do you need? Or are you already frozen and gone? Oh, we lost Sean for a second. Let me do something here. There we go. All right. Until we get Sean back, I will continue. I'll read some more of the comments here. Daniel says, agreed on that. Winning the rushing stat and turnover battle and still losing is just a perfect storm situation. Absolutely. Matty Ice on YouTube says, I'm not going to lie. This game was one of my worst crash outs ever. Absolutely gut-wrenching loss. Yeah, it was tough, especially being there in person. Let's talk a little bit more about some of those things I wanted to address. I want to wait for the Drew Allar wide receiver conversation for Sean to get back. But I do want to just recognize that two things I was very surprised by that I haven't mentioned yet. Number one, I was very impressed with Jeremiyah Love. I did not expect Jeremiyah Love to look that healthy. I did not expect him to play that much. I did not expect him to run some guys over. I did not expect him to hurdle Kobe King. Now, he did, at the end of the day, have a long run of 9 yards. And he ended up with 45 yards on 4 yards per carry. For Jeremiyah Love, that's a pretty good performance for Penn State. Overall, Penn State held Notre Dame to 116 yards rushing, 2.8 yards per carry. Keep in mind that does include sack yardage. So, there are some aspects there that, they did a pretty good job against the run, all things considered. But they could have they did pretty good on Jeremiyah. But I wanted to give Jeremiyah Love his credit. He looked really good. I don't really blame anybody as far as like Abdul Carter goes for the missed tackles on Jeremiyah Love's touchdown. They should have had the tackle. I think Abdul Carter did the right thing going for the football there. But in general, Jeremiyah Love very much impressed me. Sean, do me a favor and tilt your camera down just a smidgen. And then I wanted to also recognize Abdul Carter played way more than I was expecting. I thought he was going to be out there for a drive or two and then maybe third and long situations. He pretty much played the entire game. There was one point where Amin Vanover comes onto the field and Abdul Carter's telling him, not now. I'm good. I'm good. I did not expect that much from Abdul Carter from a snap count perspective, and I definitely didn't expect him to absolutely terrorize the Notre Dame offensive line the way he did. I don't know. I think he ended up with like a 22.5 pressure rate. I think all those numbers are probably a little bit lower, but that's still an insane number. Got a sack. He had a couple nice tackles in space. He did some crazy, awesome things. I wasn't expecting all of that. So Abdul Carter, legend in my book. To play in that game and to play the way he did with just one arm is insane. I think he solidified himself as a top 5 NFL draft pick. Just incredible. Against a Notre Dame offensive line that did lose a left tackle and did lose an offensive guard during the game, but still went to town on that right tackle pretty much the entire game. So very impressed there with Abdul Carter. Welcome back, Sean.
Yes, sorry about that. Yeah, I thought Abdul played. I agree with you. He played a lot more than I thought he would, and he also played better than I thought he would. Especially, when you consider that he was basically playing with the one arm. And like he's best defensive end I've ever seen at Penn State, and I don't say that lightly, but just really, really impressive guy, especially when you consider this is his first year playing defensive end. So just can't say enough good things about him and Tyler Warren. I don't know if Cory mentioned this or not, but Abdul Carter did declare for the NFL. That's no surprise.
Yeah, I didn't mention that, but yeah, no surprise.
Yeah, I don't think anybody's really shocked by that. So, yeah, I think anytime you lose a guy like him, you're always going to miss him. I do have confidence that we'll be able to reload next year, but man, Abdul Carter was something special this year, and he was something special again against Notre Dame. And one of the cool things about most of our star players is they played their best football down the stretch in these last 4 games here. And he is definitely one of those guys who it seemed like the bigger the stage, the better he played.
You're right. And I think T. Frank said it best, whereas like we finally got to see what Micah Parsons was going to look like if he would have stayed for his last year.
Yep.
I think that's a kind of fun way to put it. I mean, we'll see what happens. But I actually think Abdul Carter is better against the run than anything we saw with Micah Parsons. So we'll see how that translates to the next level. But I feel like it's going to be unjust for people to compare him to only being a pass rusher at the next level. I think he's pretty decent against the run as well. So we'll see what happens there, but I think he's going to be great. Since we're talking about the legends and we took a little bit more positive turn for at least a second, want to give a shout out to Tyler Warren as well. I mean, not crazy numbers during the Orange Bowl, but ends up with 6 catches for 75 yards. And then he also had 2 carries for 21 yards. So 8 total touches for 96 total yards. The 12-yard run where he stiff arms a guy to just get positive yards was insane. But again, Tyler Warren, Abdul Carter, you could seriously argue the best players to play at their position in Penn State history on the field at the same time, giving it everything they got. Pretty cool. And, at the end, you can always kind of end all these conversations with, but also painful that they weren't able to, win their last game. But Tyler Warren also showed out very, very well. And 6 catches for 75 yards. If you think about it, you combine the rest of the team, they add up to 6 catches. So he had basically half the catches and half the yardage of the team. He did get over 102 catches, which, by the way, he had more catches on the season than the entire receiving corps combined on the season, which will be a good segue here in a second, Sean. I didn't want to talk about Drew Aller and the receivers without you. But just goes to show you how much he was a part of this offense and how little the wide receivers were. He also ended up with over 1,200 yards receiving, which I believe it was only a handful of tight ends that ever got to 1,200 yards receiving. So I wanted to recognize that as well. Incredible season for Tyler Warren and Abdul Carter. So wanted to give them their at least 5 minutes there of much due respect. And it was fun watching them.
Yeah. Tyler Warren, I mean, kind of just continued doing what he's done all season. And best single season ever from Penn State tight end, might be the best guy to ever do it here as well. So I think when you think about him and Carter, though, it's like individual performances, right? And I wish there were more team accomplishments. Not that there weren't any. Won the Fiesta Bowl, beat SMU in the first round of the playoff, but you wish there was more. You wish they had like a Big Ten championship to hang their hat on, or they had, maybe a national championship game appearance to hang their hat on, or heck, we'll take a national championship win, or even an Ohio State win. But they just didn't have those, and I think that's sucks a bit. And like I said, not that they didn't do anything, but I think you kind of, even as opposed to like the class that Saquon came in with, they'll always have the Big Ten championship to look back on. They'll always have the Ohio State win, and it's just not as much with this group right now. And by this group, I mean, really Abdul Carter's recruiting class. And then you could even include the guys that were here prior, like a Tyler Warren, who didn't come in with those guys, but, they all kind of came up at the same time. I mean, Tyler Warren by far played his best football this year. He wasn't even our number one tight end until this year. But yeah, he's going to go down as one of the greats to ever do it here.
I will just say, before we segue to Drew Aller and the wide receivers that are going to take up a lot of time, I do just want to provide some breaking news that cornerback Cam Miller has officially entered the transfer portal. Cam Miller was the corner on that long touchdown from Riley Leonard to Greathouse, Notre Dame's wide receiver Greathouse, Jaden Greathouse. He has 2 years of eligibility left where he goes next. Again, I just want to reiterate, I know that it seemed like he just fell, but he got shook out of his shoes. I've been more negative towards Cam Miller than Sean had been. Ole Miss game was not great last year around this time, and I always thought he was good as a run stopper and helping with run support, but and he put himself in good positions in the passing department, but just didn't seem to have, the ball skills to really kind of make a difference. But all the best to him. But obviously he will be remembered for being put on skates in the semifinal, probably for as long as Penn State fans will remember. So Cam Miller enters the transfer portal. Any thoughts there, Sean, before we talk about Drew Aller and the receivers?
I mean, a little surprising, especially considering Jalen Kimber declared for the draft today. But writing could have been on the wall, maybe. King Mack is back, even though he'll be playing safety. You do wonder, will he be in that Lion package? So I don't know if that had an impact or.
I will. I'm not surprised by this. I think I had told you, we're texting about this. I had chalked him up as a portal entry. Because remember, you're right. You get King Mack back, but you also still have Zion Tracy, and Zion Tracy could then go play some more corner too.
Yeah, and you have Washington too, who I do like more than Cam Miller.
I will say this, and we'll talk about Kimber more a little bit later. I think that's one of the reasons why Kimber left, because Kimber, it would have been nice to have a more veteran person in the group, but I think Elliot Washington was going to play a lot next year. Played a lot down the stretch, played a lot in crucial moments, even in the semifinal. So I think as long as Elliot Washington stays healthy, he'll be playing a lot of football for Penn State. But let's not bury the lead here, Sean. Let's talk about Drew Allar and the receivers. I mentioned already a little bit of it, that I expected Drew Allar to be the better quarterback. Riley Leonard clearly was. Sean, again, I had really nice seats, and Drew Allar's back was behind me on that last drive, and I could see basically everything he could see. And when he got to his second progression and it wasn't open, and he kind of bounced back into the pocket instead of just taking off and picking up a couple yards and maybe getting out of bounds, and he kind of stepped back into the pocket, and then the pressure was coming at him. And I saw Omari Evans flashing for a second because the corner did slip for a smidgen of a second. It was like watching a car accident in slow motion. The guy was like, no. And then the interception happens. Drew Allar says afterwards that he was just trying to dirt it, just trying to basically throw it at the feet of Omari Evans and live for another day. I will just kind of stop him and say that doesn't make me feel any better, from the sense of either throw it away, run it earlier like I had suggested, or just take the sack and live for overtime. I mean, anything besides that, because Notre Dame wouldn't have had enough timeouts to stop anything. It was first and 10. You take that sack, you could just go to overtime. No one, James Franklin probably doesn't call a timeout. Marcus Freeman probably doesn't call a timeout. You can say, you know what? You won this one. Let's go play overtime. And yeah, sure, you lose a little bit of momentum, but the game isn't over. And so anything besides that, and Sean, that the coaching staff told him, you got to take care of the football. He knows that. Nobody feels worse than Drew Allar, and I don't want to turn this into a, Drew Allar stinks because of that one play. I think there's plenty of plays throughout the game where he stunk on Saturday. I think he did a lot of good things throughout the season to help them win some important games. But the conversation I think we're going to have in a second is more about that fortitude that I was talking about a second ago. But before we get right to that moment, I just want to say too, Sean, doesn't that interception kind of just outline the whole season? I mean, an opportunity to win the game. James Franklin uses his timeout. He gets a stop, which shout out to the defense for getting the stop there. You thought after that hands to the face, it was over. They get that sack. They put him in that 4th and 7 position. Marcus Freeman decides to punt. James Franklin does a great job, gives his guys 2 timeouts in approximately 50-something seconds when a drive starts. They hand the ball to Nick Singleton. He picks up a first down, which if he would have handed that ball off and he gets stopped, they probably just go to overtime. But Singleton picks up a first. That immediately means let's go for it. You trust your quarterback. You stay aggressive. Everybody wants Franklin to be aggressive, and the trust his 5-star quarterback, and then that play happens. And it wasn't like it was just a bad throw like it was in the Oregon game. It was a first progression not there, second progression not there, and then he kind of got some pressure in his face, and he kind of freaked out. But what does it say, Sean, that again the first progression wasn't there, the second progression wasn't there, and then clearly the third progression wasn't there? Nobody continued to get separation. No one continued to break out throughout this entire game besides Tyler Warren and you could, I guess, argue Nick Singleton. It kind of just is a perfect compilation of the entire season in one play. And maybe you could argue some poetic justice for how it all kind of finishes. Sean, I will let you go if you want to go talk more about Drew Allar. Or if you want to talk about receivers, I'll let you kind of just steer the conversation from here.
Heck, even when Warren came out for those couple plays, we threw to Dinkins. It's just crazy how it all kind of added up. So yeah, it really does encapsulate everything. Yeah, on that last play, because I heard Drew's explanation after the game. And either that, then that's like the worst way to throw the ball away. Like if you're gonna throw it in the dirt, you got to throw it like right at his feet, and that's why I don't necessarily know if I believe that explanation from Drew Aller. Um, he I hate to use this word, but it looked like he choked and got a little nervy and did some things that are uncharacteristic. Because keep in mind, he had 2 interceptions taken off the board too, which were poor decisions. And the one was kind of a ticky-tack penalty. The one was legitimate. And he got lucky on those that Notre Dame was penalized. And he missed Nick Singleton on what would have been an explosive play, missed Tyler Warren on what would have been an explosive play. So he was bad the whole night. But then, of course, I'm not going to let the receivers off the hook either. To not have a catch in a game of this magnitude is just mind-boggling. I don't know if Harrison Wallace's catch counts on the lateral, but I'm just going to say they didn't have a catch. And it cannot happen. And I think a lot of it is poor route running and just failing to get open, because they got guys that got speed, but they're just not, they didn't get open enough. And then when Drew had guys that did get open, he didn't hit them enough. Another big part of this game was the touchdown that was dropped by Nick Singleton. But you have to also keep in mind, it was a piss poor throw from Drew. He threw it at his knees. So Singleton had to reach down. Should have had it. It hit him in the hands, but that's a poor throw to a guy that was wide open. So just played about as bad as he could have played. And as much as you feel for him, and I know how much he cares and how he's a leader on the team, he blew it. And you can't put it exclusively on him, but he's a big part of it, because he didn't make. If he made the throws that he should have made, 100%, no doubt should have made, we still win the game. We probably don't win next week because the receivers are just that bad, but we still win this game. So it's just disappointing, and I think he's just gotta get off the mat for next year, because I know it's not going to be a next year episode, but we definitely have a chance to make noise again. I'd remind you older fans, in 1981 we had a couple tough losses, lost some guys to the NFL. Mike Munchak was a Hall of Fame offensive lineman. Some other guys too along on the defense came back and won the title in 82. So something that could happen, but they got to grow in the passing game. No two ways about it.
It just seems to me, Sean, I was trying to find a very nice tweet that somebody had. Oh, here we go. Against Ohio State, Oregon, and Notre Dame. 44 of 82 for 54% completion, 6.1 yards per attempt, 3 touchdowns, 4 interceptions, only sacked 3 times. It doesn't get much better when you consider the Boise State and SMU game. 54% completion, 6 touchdowns, 4 picks, still averaging 160 yards per game. It's probably the most frustrating part about this to me is Drew Aller has the size. He has the arm strength. He has, in my opinion, the football IQ. All those things aren't the problem. And I think he did take a step in the right direction from a psychology mentality perspective. I think he did become more of a leader this year. I think he did become more vocal. I think he did, become less timid. However, it still to me seems like he's trying to make the big play instead of just letting the big play happen. The miss to Nick Singleton on the wheel route's a good example of that. His feet are probably the biggest concern.
Yep.
He just doesn't seem to have calm feet, and his mechanics from his hips down are really the issue, even on that interception. I don't know how much better that's going to get. Again, is it a fortitude thing? Is it a thing you can train as far as your legs go and your footwork goes? I don't know. I'm not a quarterback guru, but I will give Drew Aller the benefit of the doubt when it comes to this. He is working extremely hard, and he has shown incremental improvements every single year. From when he was a freshman on campus to now, he has gotten a lot better, which is why I still kind of laugh when people are arguing with us about him starting over Sean Clifford his true freshman year. Those people have gone quiet, by the way. But he will get better before next season. What the question is always going to be, and we will not know the answer to this question, mind you, until probably October of 2025, is will he be able to step up in the big games and be that guy? Because I think Penn State starts with what? I forget, is it Nevada, FIU, Villanova?
Murderers Row, yes, something like that.
Right. We're not going to learn anything about Drew Aller in those games, even if he throws for 4 touchdowns in each of those. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's not going to matter. So the scary thing is you're not going to know until this opportunity or this situation presents itself again, which I don't know how you're going to feel any better about it until he proves you otherwise. So it's frustrating, but I will say this. I tend to always have, maybe compassion isn't the right word, but a certain level of benefit of the doubt for guys that work hard and truly care. And he does truly care and he does work hard. But man, you really needed him to just not stink on Saturday. That's it. You didn't even need him to throw for 4 touchdowns. You just needed him to make the JV throw to Nick Singleton in the flat. You just needed him to, hit a couple more plays over the middle. And then at the end, just to take the sack. And that, I think, is probably where the fans are most frustrated. That is where fans are concerned about the future. But you still take him. You take him over probably 90% of the quarterbacks in the country. But if Penn State's trying to go from, let's just say, a top 5 team to potentially a national champion, they're going to need more from their quarterback than what they got in the Orange Bowl.
Yeah, especially when you consider the security blanket of Tyler Warren is gone next year. And I do think Tyler covered up a lot of deficiencies all season in the passing game just by being there, being a guy that could make contested catches, being a guy that could get open. And he's not going to be there next season. And I do wonder, Cory and I hear some things. I do wonder how much attrition we'll have outside of Tyler Warren. Not talking about tight ends, I'm talking about receivers. If anybody departs, we know Devontae Ross and Kyron Hudson are coming in. I think there's going to be some questions. Does anybody else come in after the spring portal, which will open after spring ball sometime? And that one tends to be a little less crowded, but there will be guys in there. KLS was in it last year. Ended up doing well at Auburn this year. Keon Coleman a couple of years ago was in it and helped Florida State go undefeated during the regular season. So there are typically there are guys that are in there. And you hear reports that the NIL situation is improving. So maybe you back up a Brinks truck for somebody. And you may have to. And then you have to hope that one of these receivers, a Tysier Denmark, a Peter Gonzalez, one of these guys step up and be that next guy. As well as hoping that Ross translates over right from Troy, and Kieran Hudson is ready to fit into that room as well. So it's kind of where we're at right now. So just for just to keep, it sounds weird because we were so bad throwing the ball on Thursday, but just to keep pace with where we were when you account for Tyler Warren departing, you're going to need Drew Aller to be better next year, because I don't think there's any, Jahan Dotsons or Allen Robinsons waiting in the wings here.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know the answer to that last part there, because I remember Allen Robinson, I think, had one catch in Joe Paterno's last season.
Yep.
And it wasn't like he immediately came on campus and was a stud. For whatever reason, they didn't play him very much in that 2011 season. I don't know why.
Could have used him too, if you think about that team.
So maybe Tysier Denmark, maybe Peter Gonzalez is ready to rock and roll to that degree. I don't know. I would venture to say an Anthony Ivy or a is it Johnson? I can't think of his first name.
Tyler Johnson, yeah.
Tyler Johnson. I feel like if they would have done something by now if they were really able to. But I don't know about those redshirt freshman guys. But you're right. You got to find 100 catches somewhere next year, which is kind of terrifying. But I will say this, Sean, I don't know what to think about the passing game. And don't get me wrong, I know what to think of it. It stunk. But I don't know how to fix it. It feels like a chicken egg situation, right? Where it's like, yes, Drew Aller could have done better in these situations. And he should throw people open more. And he should throw a better anticipation. And he needs to see things and trust things better. And he needs to have better footwork. Agree with all those things. But DeAndre Lambert-Smith didn't have a ton of success with him and seemed to be okay, even though he went to Auburn with a really terrible quarterback situation there. And so then you're like, okay, is it all Drew Aller? But then people are going to come back and say, look at this play. Nobody is open. So then you're like, okay, maybe it's the receivers. So you just kind of keep bouncing back and forth between a rock and a hard place here on what the problem is. And I don't think there's a rocket science. I don't think there's an equation that you can just kind of, okay, we need this and then we'll get that. I don't think it's that simple. But I think the biggest thing to keep in mind is Penn State, two things. One, didn't really recruit any receivers for like a year and a half. Carmelo Taylor ended up transferring out. That was a big hit. And they didn't get anybody else for about a year and a half. Then now they went to the transfer portal and they tried. So it's not like they're not trying. They went on and got Dante Cephas. Didn't work. They went on and tried to get Malik McClain. Didn't work. They went on and got Julian Fleming. Didn't work. Now, Sean, you were, early on, you were one of the ones that said Julian Fleming alone isn't going to be enough. But they did try some things. And I think it shows you that, hey, it's not always going to be that simple with the transfer portal. But more importantly, I don't think it's as simple as like, oh, just go get the next Allen Robinson. I think it turns into a development conversation. And I know Marcus Hagans literally didn't have very much to develop because he didn't have a lot of guys that were his here. But now the conversation turns to maybe a conversation that Marcus Hagans doesn't want us to have. Look, they haven't recruited a bunch yet. His guys are only freshmen right now and are about to be, I guess, sophomores. So I'm like, okay, on one hand, you got to give them a little bit more time, because I think somebody had a really good point of I think it was T. Frank. This group was not in the same room as what Phil Trotwine took over, but it is in the same building. as far as lack of depth and lack of. So is it like, hey, you got a good coach here. He just needs more time because there was more levels of shit to this to clean up than people realized, and it's going to take some time? Or is it kind of like you've had 2 years to develop and we haven't seen anything? I don't know the answer to that, but I will say this. And I texted you this, Sean, the other day. When it seems like it's 50-50 on whether they should hold on to a guy, Franklin's been very quick to pull the trigger. You can, it's been like that for a while now. So I would assume that there's a better chance Marcus Higgins doesn't come back than he does. But I will say, and I want to be on record saying this, does he need more time given the room he had? I mean, none of his guys that he went and got or got to develop himself are even redshirt sophomores yet. So I don't know, Sean. I can like almost have this conversation with myself over and over because it just seems like purgatory. I don't know what the right answer is. I don't know if anyone does. You have two guys that you mentioned coming in. Do you go get a third guy? Do you go get a third and a fourth guy? I can tell you right now with very strong confidence, I don't expect Omari Evans and Trey Wallace or even an Anthony Ivy or a Johnson. Like, I feel like we're going to lose at least two of them just because of the amount of disrespect that they probably feel towards, how this all went down. They probably don't think it's all their fault. They probably think it's somewhat the quarterback. You know what I mean? There's no way that those guys are going to be like, yeah, I'm cool sitting here, staying here for this. So they're going to lose a couple. Do you go get more? How much do you trust Peter Gonzalez, Tyseer Denmark? I don't know, Sean. I'm venting at this point, but it is not an easy fix.
My thing with Higgins is, has anything gotten better with his group in particular? I'd argue no. Like, even think about Harrison Wallace for a sec, Corey.
Yeah.
Is he really that much better than he was in 2022? Or is it just Tinsley and Washington and Lambert Smith are gone? I don't think he's that much better.
I don't know how much Trey Wallace has been good since he got hurt.
Yeah, that's true too. And then Omari Evans, same thing. Kind of been on this for a while. Just kind of think he's a one-trick pony. He can go deep for you. He could run a post. He could run a go.
Can't beat man coverage.
No.
Can't get off the line.
Yeah. Liam Clifford. If Liam Clifford's playing for you at this level, good luck. I don't want to be disrespectful, but he's just not what you need at this level. If you're trying to do the kind of things that you want to do. But then he's just not developing any other guys. And it's not like these guys are all like 2-star guys. They're not. Like, Anthony Ivy was a 4-star guy. Tyler Johnson was a 4-star guy. Harrison Wallace,
if anything,
4-star guy. Like,
if anything,
these are
Omari
not like
Evans,
some bums that we found.
Right. Omari Evans was when I was a quarterback. Like, those other three you just mentioned, theoretically, should have had the leg up on him from the get-go.
Yeah, but I think he's just so athletically gifted, which he is, that he's able to get on the field. And look, I think we use him more because for whatever reason, Mike Yurcich did not use him last year. And he does have a role on this team, but he just can't do anything else besides go deep on a consistent basis. So that's where we're at with him. And really, to answer my own question, can we trust him to develop other guys? No. Like, what track record does he have that he can do it? I actually trust Stubblefield more to develop guys. Now, he couldn't recruit and even recruiting, I mean, honestly, Corey, it's a marginal improvement with Higgins over Stubblefield. Like, he brings in more guys. He's also lost some battles that we probably should have won on the recruiting trail.
Recruiting trail and portal.
Yeah. So he's a marginally better recruiter, but he's not as good of a developer. I'll always say this: Stubblefield could develop his players. So I think
I hate this conversation because we've had it for 2 years now.
I know, and I think for the first time, I probably lean more toward I think we got to fire Marquise Higgins.
I think I'm leaning more that direction too.
And I wasn't saying that before.
No, my caveat again to all that is we don't know how much shit had to be picked up. And that's just the case. Now,
Yeah,
I want to share
I don't even like the funny thing is, Corey, like I always say I would never want to be a supervisor or manager at work because I would just hate firing people. It's just like in my nature, like I just hate doing that. So I hate advocating for something like this. But think of it this way. If Ohio State had a position group that was just awful, like just terrible, would they hang on to their coach?
Right.
No. So I don't think we should be in that business either.
I want to share an anecdote that T. Frank had when he was watching practice.
Mhm.
He said they was with the receiver position group and they were going through some drills, and Franklin came over and was talking to them about how the Notre Dame corners like to hold. He's like, they don't like holding the jerseys, they don't like holding the shoulder pads, they like holding around your hips, and that's where they're going to try to hold it because it doesn't show the jersey actually being pulled. And Franklin, which is kind of funny because in all of this, you can go back to Franklin was a receivers coach in the NFL. Franklin went through, this is how we're going to beat them when they try to hold us this way. I haven't watched the film that closely yet. However, it didn't seem evident that the receivers were taking the notion or the training or learning correctly, even when they were kind of told what to do. Clearly, they didn't have any catches. So that to me is one anecdote, small sample size, right? But if you're telling them what to do and they don't do it, I don't know what else you can do, right? Is it the guys? Is it the coaches? I don't know. But it kind of just highlights where we're at with all of this. It's embarrassing, Sean. And to be a top 4 team in the country, to get this far, the Georgia receivers aren't great, mind you, but to get this far, and I know they played Boise State and SMU, and theoretically maybe they played Notre Dame in the first round, they would have lost right away. We don't feel any better about this season, but they did make it this far. But to be literally one win away from the national championship without a receiver that you can trust is, well, A, it's impressive, but B, it's mind-boggling.
Yeah, it really is. It's funny. I had a fleeting thought that I'm only half serious on. Maybe Franklin's got to coach the receivers. Saban used to coach the defensive backs at Alabama. I don't think Franklin would want to do that, especially with how many hats he has to wear in modern college football. But if it was 10 years ago, I'd probably be like, look, he can't pick a receivers coach right anyway. Maybe he should just do it. Yes, he's had success doing it, and he's an ace recruiter.
It's not the worst idea, Sean. We mentioned Josh Gaddis, who's currently the offensive coordinator over at Maryland. I don't expect Mike Locksley to get the Jets job, but theoretically,
he interviewed for the Jets job.
Yeah, you didn't see that?
Please, God, let him take the Jets job.
You didn't see that?
No, that's hilarious.
Oh yeah. That's why I texted you. I was like, why are the Jets? The Jets keep like tweeting everybody they interview, and whether it's for the head coaching job or the GM job. And I'm just like, why do they keep broadcasting this? And then some of the names have been terrible, like really bad.
Mike Locksley.
Yeah. So there you have it. But I think the Josh Gaddis, who knows if James Franklin and Josh Gaddis even get along anymore.
Yeah.
But you could argue they have not been as good a receiver since then.
They have not. I mean, and I think Gaddis had a mixed bag as an OC. Had the one or 2 years with Michigan. The 1 year I think he did win the Broyles Award, but since then he was at Miami. But in fairness to him, Miami is where coaches go to die. And then he was with Maryland, and I just don't think Maryland had a whole lot there this year. So you have to take that into account. I would not want him to be OC. Obviously, we already have Andy. You'd probably have to offer him the co-OC role, which I don't think I'd have an issue with. And the thought would probably be maybe he would take over for Kotelnicki when he eventually gets the job. Be fine with me because we haven't had who was the best receivers coach since him? Gerard Parker? it's just been slim pickings.
Yeah, it's not great.
Yeah, and
Gerard Parker
was
is having a pretty good coaching career, even though he didn't do great there. So that again, the biggest thing I have against blowing the whole damn thing up is I hate starting over, right? And if you remember, people were starting to get pissed at Phil Trotwine there for his. Now he didn't take as long to turn things around, but people were starting to get frustrated with him too. And I'm always hesitant about blowing the whole damn thing up and starting over.
Yeah.
However, I don't know.
Well,
I don't know.
I do think what saved Troutwine was he was a great recruiter from the get-go.
Yeah.
And Marquis Sagans, I wouldn't call him great. He hasn't been bad. But he hasn't been great either.
And he has a 5-star quarterback to kind of say, hey, come play for this guy.
Yeah. So there are things, and I don't think the NIL situation is as bad as some fans think. It's probably quite a bit better. But it's going to be a tough sell because now Penn State has a reputation for not being able to develop receivers. And it's funny because John Dotson wasn't here that long ago. Parker Washington was not here that long ago, but reputations kind of change fast. And that's so yeah, that was one of the reasons I was hesitant to fire him too. Like going into this game, I did not want to fire Marquis Sagans. But I just think right now, with just how embarrassing the receivers were, somebody's got to be held accountable. I would think. And we could do better, right? I think. Like, there's no reason why. Like, Franklin's so good at
better than zero. I would hope so.
Yeah, and better as a coach. Like Franklin has been so good at filling needs. OC has been a little more of a mixed bag, but defensive line. We go from Sean Spencer, John Scott Jr., who ended up taking a job with the Lions, might go to the Super Bowl now, and he was able to find Deion Barnes. Always had a good linebackers coach, safeties coach, Bob Shoop. Then he had Tim Banks, who's defensive coordinator for Tennessee now, and now he has Poindexter. So he's always been good at filling certain jobs. It's just that receivers coach, for whatever reason, has just been so hard for him to fill, and I don't get it. I don't get why.
Well, I can't wait to talk about this for the next 6-7 months.
I know. It's going to suck.
Well, all right. Let's get out of that. Let's go into some fan questions, Sean. That make you feel a little bit better?
Depends on the question.
Okay. How about this overarching question for you, Sean? This question here is from Bobo Meister 74. He says, enjoy the season with you guys. What do we need to do next season to get to the next level? We have a tougher schedule, path, no doubt. What changes need to be made? Personally, Franklin's game management was not an issue this year. Yeah, I'll echo that. We haven't really talked a lot about James Franklin. I know people are going to spend the 1-15 and against top 5 teams at Penn State, 1-18 overall. But in general, I thought James Franklin did a really good job this year. He gave his 5-star quarterback a chance to go win the game to go to the national championship at the end of the day. That's what he did. He gave his 5-star quarterback a chance to go win the football game to go to the national championship. I think that's not the issue. So, Sean, what else? How do we get to the next level? You're going to say receiver, aren't you?
I will answer that question. I want to address the last point first, too. Yeah. One of the reasons, I don't know about you, Cory, but the national sports media, I can't stand listening to them talk about Penn State football. Awful. And it's not that I'm like a precious little snowflake and I can't hear anybody talk bad about my team. No, it's that everything is just so surface level.
Yep.
It's just, and you could tell. And I'm not talking about like guys like Josh Pate who cover college football, knows what it takes to build a winner and everything. Talking about the First Takes of the world, Colin Cowherds, like people who talk 80% about pro sports, especially. Mm-hmm. You could just tell they just know enough to get along in like casual bar conversations for college football. And they spend their 10-minute segment talking about Penn State. They're going to talk about James Franklin for about 70 to 80% of that,
Right.
and move on to the next segment. And it just annoys me that they don't really even point at anything that he did. They just go, Franklin can't do it. Franklin can't do it. Franklin can't do it. And then that's it. They just kind of call it a day then. They don't really get into specifics, though.
Feinbaum brought up, he blamed Franklin for the interception, saying that he should just went to overtime. You know damn well if Franklin sits on that, everyone goes after him for not being aggressive.
Yep. I was just about to get to that.
I'm sorry.
Because that's no, that's okay. That's the one thing that you could point at and say, that's where he lost the game. Well, yeah, if you're really fishing for something, I guess you could point at that, but I totally disagree. I said at the time to my family, we got to go for the win now. You're trying to get to a national championship. You have to trust your guys to go for the win now. And that was after the Singleton run. And then the next player, 2 plays later, he throws the interception. And yeah, everybody would be crucifying him. And I probably would be too if we lost in overtime. I'd be like, we had 50 seconds left. You go for the win there. But again, it's just surface level, looking for a reason to blame the coach. Freeman won, so Freeman's a genius. Franklin lost, so Franklin's a loser, moron. And then they just move on to the next thing. And and I guess to be fair to them, they talk about so much stuff that you can't get into the weeds as much, but that's the whole problem with everything, isn't it? So yeah, that got on my nerves. Like, and then really the only valid coaching thing that I might be able to point to is out of halftime, we just look so flat on defense. And I don't know if we were preparing for Angeli during the halftime, or I don't know. I don't know why we look so flat, but we did. So getting back to the question, I do apologize for the sidetrack, but that was just something that's been in my craw all week. What we have to do, I mean, obviously the receivers have to improve, but even more than that, retaining what we have. If Zane Durant's already back, which is great news, but being able to get Deni Dennis Sutton back, which I think I feel okay about, because I do think that's a guy that right now would probably get drafted in the 3rd or 4th round, but could very easily be a 1st or 2nd round potential player for somebody his size that could do what he could do. You saw the interception. It was one of the great plays that everybody's going to forget about college and Penn State football history. Getting him back, trying to get Kobe King back, trying to get Nick Singleton or Kaytron Allen or both back. So I think retaining what we have, improving the passing game, Drew continuing to get better. Yeah, that's really it. And I think if we're able to get past Oregon in that late September game, we're probably going at least 11-1. And I think that's something that's definitely in the cards for us. But that's a critical game early in the season.
I'm looking at a lot of these other questions. Pretty much answered all of them. They're all pretty much receiver questions. A lot of people gave a lot of compliments. Sean, I don't know if you looked at this tweet yet. To go read it, make you feel better about yourself. You guys killed it. Looking forward to the next season. You guys rocked all year. Great job, gentlemen, all year.
I guess they were able to compartmentalize my bold prediction of Harrison Wallace getting 100 yards in this game.
Yes.
I appreciate you all for that.
Ryan Shorter says, great job this season. You're my number 1 PSU pod. So I appreciate that. So a lot of just really positives there. Devin says, thank you guys for a great year. But again, ask more about kind of next year stuff. So we'll kind of move. Do you have some questions about next year? So we'll go in that direction for at least the fan question portions. Let me see if I want to start with. So Bobo asked, what do we need to do next year? Or no, we asked that question. Matty Ice says, what is the pitch that next year's team can be better? Seems like we're banking on a lot of players to come back if we want to reach the same level. Thanks to the coverage of the season, you guys crushed it as always. Then also, Mudbug says, heartbreaking game, devastated for James Franklin. The guy's heck of a season. Do you think we can make it back next year? Thanks for the fun year, fellas. So we can kind of combine those together. Appreciate that kind words there. But Shawn, what is your elevator pitch for some optimism heading into next year?
The good thing is I feel a lot better going into next year than I did going into this year. And I guess I guess I did pick us to go 11-1, but just sitting where I was last January as compared to this January, because we do get a lot back next year, potentially. So yes, the first step is retaining, and then maybe picking up another receiver in the portal. I'm not sure if we'll bring in 3. I think a lot of that depends on, does Harrison Wallace come back? Does Omari Evans come back? Because I think if both of them don't, or one of them don't, there's a pretty good chance then we do go in the portal and get one. But yeah, you're going to have to improve the passing game. One of the things that I think you can feel good about, even if Singleton and Allen aren't back, and I think at least one of them will be, we're going to be able to run the football next year because our offensive line is going to be really, really, really good. Like, this will probably be our best offensive line, barring injury, since the 1994 year. Assuming Vanga comes back, which I think he will, we're going to get everybody back except Wormley. And I am interested to see what we do in the whole Donka Rucci situation. Who starts there? Will Donka be ready, first of all? And then who starts there? Somebody move to guard? How does Shelton fit into that whole thing? And we still have Cooper Cousins, so we are deep there. That's a credit to the talent that Phil Troutwine has brought in. So we're going to be good there. And another thing that we're going to have to do, I'd like to see us pick up another transfer defensive tackle, because that depth, it's just we're relying on a lot of young guys. Zane Durant will be there. I don't know when Alonzo Ford will be back. Hopefully to start the season, he will be.
You want another one on top of the one they just got?
Yes, we brought in the Waffle Man. Unfortunately, his name is Wafley. But he's another one of these. He's kind of like in that Tyreek Blanding, Liam Andrews mold where he just hasn't done a whole lot yet. And we're going to need 1 or 2 of them. Franklin prefers to have 5 guys to rotate through. So we're going to need those guys to step up. And then obviously
Andrews.
Yeah. So he's still there. And then, it's going to be tough replacing Abdul Carter. There is really no replacing Abdul Carter. But hopefully in the aggregate, I think Max Granville is going to be really, really, really good. To play as much as he did as a 17-year-old at a position as physical as defensive end was impressive, to say the least. And we got to get the Mike linebacker figured out if Kobe King doesn't come back. So not that there aren't holes there are, but I think you have a lot to work with, and I still think this is going to be a really good team next year.
Yeah, I agree with everything you said. I want to go back to how you started that whole thing by saying you feel better about this team than you did about this point last year for this year's team. I'm kind of in the same boat. I mean, I picked them to go 9-3. I didn't think Drew Aller was even going to be as good as he was this year. So maybe egg on my face a little bit as far as the improvements he made, and he could still improve more. But just the fact that Drew Aller was able to run the ball and pick up some first down on his legs made a huge difference this year. And they theoretically are going to have a really good season. They're going to need to figure out some things, obviously, as some position groups. But if they get Nick Singleton back and or Katron Allen back, I think you got to be really optimistic going into the season. So we'll see. But even if Drew Aller doesn't improve, you got to think this team's winning 10 games at least, which is pretty exciting. Schedule is more challenging. You have Oregon, you got to go at Iowa. Who do they all? They have somebody
At
they
Ohio
have
State,
at
too.
Ohio State after a bye, so we'll see. But if things naturally progress, this is looking like a good team. To put it positive there. I don't think there's any other fan questions I really needed to dive into. A lot of people dropped them, but I think we kind of covered everything that was asked. Jim asked about the composure. We talked about a lot of questions about receiving coaches, about the route specifically on the interception, development, talent issues at cornerback or at receiver, excuse me. We talked about Drew Allar, how he can be better in his biggest moments. I think we got all of those covered. So we appreciate all the fan questions. I know we didn't really give you guys all the shout outs, but I think we covered everything in those today. So I appreciate you guys asking those. We will continue to do those throughout the year. Sean, I'm not completely done with this recap. I have a couple of random things I just want to maybe talk about real quick, if you'll indulge me.
I shall.
One, Zakee Wheatley had 16 tackles on the day and a sack, and a pick. I just literally had a small bit about Zakee Wheatley like 2 weeks ago, but just again to reiterate, Zakee Wheatley is turned into a stud. Obviously, Jalen Reed will be going to the NFL, but Wheatley will be looked on as kind of the veteran guy in the secondary, and adds another turnover in the playoff. He's really living up to the turnover king name. Massive interception early that led to points. 16 tackles. We kind of harped on him early in his career for tackling, and he leads the team in tackles against Notre Dame. So wanted to give him some love. Wanted to give Deni Dennis Sutton love. I can't believe we've gone this long without talking about this guy. 6 tackles, 2 sacks, and an interception. Played phenomenal. I feel like because he's not as quick, he's never going to get as much love as he deserves from a pass rushing perspective. But man, is he really good. And he's had a really good last month. See what happens there. Hope he comes back, because if he does, the defensive line will be in a really good spot. We're going to talk about Zane Durant in a second. But I wanted to mention. I want to mention anybody else. Well, I just wanted to mention, we talked about the offensive line a little bit, but the offensive line, they did it very well. Nolan Rucci, very well. They protected Drew Allar pretty damn well, considering all of the different things that Al Golden likes to do. They did pretty well as far as shoring that up. The whole offensive line, but I'm going to name them off just for that. Drew Shelton, Vega Ane, Nick Dawkins, Cooper Cousins, Nolan Rucci. I say Sal Wormley. Who am I forgetting? Anybody that really made a lot of impacts? I'm not really sure, but
I think you got them all.
Those guys played phenomenal, and they deserve a lot of credit. So those are just some random ones. I wanted to give a shout out to Devon J. Thomas as well. He was one of my personal favorite guys. 6-year guy, leadership guy, was very quick to defend Drew Allar in the locker room, whether you agree with him or not. I think it's a big move for him. Always liked how he played. And so I wanted to give him some love. Same with Keziah Izzard as well. I think that covers him, Sean, for me.
Yeah. I want to echo what you said about Deni Dennis Sutton. He's really played his best football this last month, and hoping he comes back, because there's a lot that he could build on, and how he's come along. I mean, he's been pretty good since he got here, but you could just see, going from, as really when he got here, a young guy, then he became a good player, then he became a star player. And I think that next step to being a superstar is on the horizon for him. Zane Durant, really opened things up for those other defensive tackles to eat too. Made things a lot easier on the linebackers. And he's been doing that all season. Like, to see a guy who's really just not built, God just didn't grant him with awesome size, but he does the work in the weight room, got up to he's pushing 290 now. And to see just how strong he is, like, he is built like a bulldog, and he plays like one too. And he still has that speed, which makes him really, really fun to watch. A little bit of an Anthony Zettel to him. So just he's been, and I feel like he's not talked enough about, because some games he'll only have a tackle or two. But if you're watching him, like, he is absorbing so many guys and just and oftentimes will just knock them on their ass. So it's been awesome to watch the way he's come along. Yeah. And then
what about Amin Vanover?
Yes, Amin Vanover. God, we're gonna miss him. I feel like the the Lord of the Rings award that we give out, we should just rename it the Amin Vanover Award. I know Cory will not approve of that.
I might be able to find some leeway there, just because I'm such an Amin Vanover fan club.
Yes, we could even name it the Vanover Hardy Award. I mean, our award show is already called the Hardys, but I feel like, shout out Daquan Hardy. His Bills, I think he's with the Bills still, just one, unfortunately. But just guys that are glue guys that always step up when we need them, unsung heroes, and we're gonna miss them next year. I think I read somewhere, Cory, correct me if I'm wrong, Smith Vilber could conceivably come back next year for his 20th season. I thought I read that somewhere.
He was hurt, so
because he's been hurt so much. I don't know if that's something he'd want to do, but I would certainly love to have him back, because I think he's another guy that quietly plays. He doesn't have quite the explosivity, but he is a big man that is particularly good against the run.
I don't think so.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I knew.
This was his. Yeah, I think he's done. His true freshman season was 2019.
Wow.
So 2019, played in 2 games. So that was like his redshirt year. Then 2020 was his redshirt freshman year.
COVID season.
And then it was a COVID season. But then he had his sophomore year. He actually played in 12 games. Then he had his redshirt junior year in 2022, where he didn't play until the Rose Bowl. And then the 2023 season, he missed because of injury. And then he had this year. So let me go back and look. So 2024.
23 could be a medical year.
Maybe. Right now, they have him listed as a redshirt senior plus. So unless he got another year, unless he ended up with 2 redshirt injury years, which they rarely give people, he would be done. But maybe they are going to give him that. Maybe I know some. It's weird to me, though. Well, 2 things that's weird about this. Number one, you think they would label that on the team roster that way if he was already given another year for the 2023 season. Secondly, I don't know how accurate their roster is, but they still list him as his major is still undecided.
He might want to decide.
I feel like after 6 years, you should have some idea what you don't like. But so I'm assuming that's not updated.
I'd assume so. That is funny. Yeah. And then I think we'd be remiss if we didn't mention Jalen Reed and how important he was to this team all season. Sucks that this was his last game. But it's just, how well he played all year. thought all season that he'd have KJ Winston next to him. KJ Winston goes down, and he really takes the bull by the horns in that secondary. So just want to mention him and how good of a season he had.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the pick 6 against Wisconsin theoretically saves the season. Can make the same case for Julian Fleming in the USC game. So I will just give the shout out now. Next episode, Sean, you and I need to figure out when we want to actually have it, but that will be our Hardy's Award Show episode. So if you're not familiar with our Hardy's Award Show, let me see if I can find.
We were tuxedos for it.
Yes, that's right. Our Hardy's Award Show is the awards we give out with help from you guys for players on the team. The awards are the following. I'll post this, and Sean and I will come up with like our nominees, and we'll let you guys vote on who deserves to win them. But there they go. It wasn't loading at first. Here we go. So the awards are premature maturation, which is somebody who kind of showed out before we were ready for them to show out, kind of someone who stepped up. To give you an idea, KJ Winston won that last year. Getting offensive goes to the Offensive Player of the Year. Tyler Warren won that last year. Potentially could be a back-to-back winner.
Did he really?
Yeah. Havoc Award last year went to Chop Robinson. I think we probably have an idea who's going to win that one. Mr. Dependable went to Olu. The All Right Award. It's not really designed to go to 3 all right players, but 3 really good players. They went to Tyler Warren, Nick Singleton, and Chop Robinson. And the Samwise Gamgee Unsung Hero Award / Amin Vanover / Daquan Hardy Award went to Adisa Isaac. One I did not post on here. Let me see if I have it on here. I just didn't. Maybe we just didn't do a picture of it. But the Joe Moorhead Assistant Coach Award as well. So those are the Hardys. We'll post them on X, and we'll let you guys vote on the winners. Last some housekeeping items real quick, Sean. We mentioned Cam Miller entered the transfer portal, cornerback who gave up that touchdown to Jaden Greathouse. I always want to call him Lighthouse. Additionally, safety King Mack, boomerang transfer portal, went to Alabama for a year, and now the safety King Mack is coming back to Penn State. That was announced just a moment ago. Since the last time we spoke with you guys, Penn State also landed a defensive tackle with 4 years of eligibility in Owen. Is it Wayful or Wayfully?
I think it's Wayfully.
Wayfully. Okay. Wayfully, he was at Michigan, originally from New Jersey, 4-star guy, 300-pounder. So getting some size in there at defensive tackle. He transferred from Michigan. He also has a brother who's, I think, a 2026 prospect.
Yes, he does.
So keep that in mind. And then finally, TJ Shanahan Jr., who we had mentioned because he had visited a while ago, but the interior offensive lineman from A&M started in 5 games for A&M, transferred to Penn State as well. So those are the transfers. And then Zane Durant has officially announced he's coming back, which is huge for Penn State. I actually saw Durant's parents walking out of the stadium. Didn't seem as the time to go up and say how much I love their son, but he's coming back, which is huge. Jalen Kimber, we mentioned at the beginning of the show, corner, he has declared for the NFL draft. Abdul Carter is officially declared for the NFL draft. Dom DeLuca, I haven't seen anything official, but pretty sure Dom DeLuca, the linebacker, is coming back for his last year. Drew Allard obviously is coming back for his last year. Still don't know on Nick Singleton, Katron Allen, Kobe King, Denai Dennis Sutton, Trey Wallace, Amari Evans, Liam Clay, any of the receivers. Who knows what's happening there? Hayden Hint, hint, nudge, nudge. I don't think all the receivers are staying. Just by the way. And then, am I missing any? It's probably will happen. Just hasn't happened yet. Xander Zahadak is probably going to hit the portal, I would assume.
I'd imagine. Yeah.
And I would be interested to see if any of the offensive linemen. I hate to say it, and I don't want to put bad juju out there, but like, I know, used to be offensive linemen would literally develop for 3 years before playing like their last 2 years. I don't know if that's still the case anymore. I'm just curious about like an Alex Burkmeyer or a Javen Williams who haven't gotten the field yet, but were like top prospects. Are like what are their thoughts right now? Because they can still go and are young enough to develop somewhere else. A Chimney Ono. I'm just trying to think of some guys that maybe keep in mind, like we haven't heard a lot about that theoretically they're not past due on playing, especially for offensive line. But this is going to be a big spring for those guys.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I don't think it's the end of the world if they're not playing much this year because we have so much experience coming back. But you have to understand from their perspective, they want to play.
Mm-hmm.
And the portal is there. And not to mention, it's not like Phil Troutline has stopped recruiting. Like there are a lot of young guys. I think of an Egan Boyer coming up, who we've heard very good things about. Garrett Sexton is there. Not to mention the guys we're bringing in this class. So there's a lot of there are a lot of young guns coming in or who are freshmen right now. They're going to be nipping at Burkmeyer and Williams' heels, and they're not even on the field yet. So it's going to be a crowded room. That's kind of what you want along the offensive line. It's 5 people that you need to find a spot for. So there's going to be there's going to be and should be a lot of competition. And then as far as guys coming back, yeah, like that's one of the keys, right? Is being able to reload. Look at Ohio State this year. They were able to get a lot of their guys back, the JTTs, the Jack Sawyers of the world, and Emeka Ibuka, and it looks like they're right on the verge of winning a national championship. Michigan did the same thing 2 years ago. Losing a heartbreaker in the Final Four. We know something about that. But they were able to get pretty much everybody back, including Connor Stallions. But even take Stallions out of it, I still think they had the best team in the country that year. So getting everybody back, that's kind of the new key in college football, it seems to be. On top of, being able to recruit, being able to fill holes in the portal, just getting people back. And that's easier now a little bit with NIL. And if you have a collective that's good and that emphasizes getting, retaining the talent you have, it's a much easier conversation to be like, look, you're going to be a 5th or 6th round draft pick. Come back here. You're going to make more money here and you're going to get better. And maybe you'll be a 2nd or 3rd, or who knows, maybe you'll F around and become a 1st round pick next year.
We'll see what happens. But you're right. That retainment is almost more important than importing somebody in.
Yeah, that's a brand new thing in college football. But that seems to be the trend, is getting your guys back. Because we just saw Michigan do it, and I think Ohio State will win the national championship. Who the heck knows? But they're there. They're in the title game now. So, yeah, that's kind of where we're at right now, guys.
Sean, we will wrap up the season in the next episode. Any final thoughts on the Orange Bowl before we close that book?
Yeah, I mean, it sucks. It's going to be a bad taste in all of our mouths for a long, long, long time. But it's, we kind of got to move on. And I know for myself, losing Notre Dame especially is just so painful. I hope we play them again in the playoffs next year and we're able to avenge the loss. But it sucks. That's really all I could say. God, it was. My fiance saw me on Thursday and she's like, I don't think I've ever seen you look so sad. Like I almost like just felt more sad than anything on Thursday. Just because the game was so stressful. If you notice, my in-game tweets wasn't my best performance because I was just I was almost too nervous to tweet. It was just such a nerve-wracking game. And yeah, to lose a game like that, it's just a kick in the gut. And we've lost a lot of games like that over the years. But to be on that stage and to lose to Notre Dame, and then they're playing Ohio State for the national championship. Like, God almighty.
Your favorite
Oh,
teams.
God. Yeah, literally my it is the Hitler versus Stalin meme.
I think I saw someone made it specifically for this game.
Yeah, it is literally that. I saw somebody with the Alien versus Predator one, and the caption for that movie is, "No matter who wins, we lose." And that's where we're at right now. So just that, and then Penn State had a chance to prevent that, and we didn't. So that makes it even worse.
All right, Sean, you and I will text about when we want to come back for the Hardys, but expect to hear from us from next week, and we shall go from there. Thanks to you guys for listening. We'll be back again to wrap up the season in the next episode, but hope everyone's doing all right in the new year. That's Sean Kane. I'm Cory Lestochi. You've been listening to Hardcore Penn